On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we're discussing When the End Began by one of my very favorite bands, Silent Planet. I'm very excited to talk about it today. What are you doing?
What am I doing?
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I'm...
This is, by the way, this is take two, because I did a goof. More after the intro music. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale, and I'm the most interesting man in the world.
I'm OJ, and I'm the most interesting man in the world.
We're both drinking Dos Equis today. Mm-hmm. We had a bit the first time we recorded this that I don't feel like doing again.
It was clever then. Now it's...
Now it's just trite. It's trodden over.
Because you didn't plug in the USB...
I did not plug in the codec, and this is the third time I've done that. Thankfully, we weren't extremely far into the podcast. We were far enough for it to be an annoyance.
But just far enough.
But I did not want to sacrifice audio quality for the sake of my own convenience. So, here we are. Here we are again.
So, how was your week?
Now I'm just...
No, we're just... I already told you that.
I already told you how my fucking week was, asshole. Okay, first thing we should talk about is we have an actual sponsor this week.
We have a sponsor.
Somebody gave me money.
Mm-hmm.
The money was in the form of cash handed to me in person at my parents' house by my older sister, Hannah. So...
Let the clock go now. There you go.
Hannah, this is your shining moment of glory. You've been one of the greatest supporters of this podcast from the very start, and I love you all the more for it.
Aw.
You've always been very, very supportive of my creative endeavors. From my start in speech when I was in high school, you were the one who convinced me to do it. God, don't do this shit again, OJ.
All right.
Don't start with me.
I didn't do it. I didn't do anything. I said
you
nothing.
You gave me a look. That's all you needed to do.
Yeah.
She convinced me to join the speech team, not to do whatever horrible thing you're thinking of.
No, I wasn't thinking anything.
Gutter mind.
Speech team is all I was thinking.
Sure. Anyway, you've always been very supportive of me and my creative endeavors. And I love you a lot. You're my big sister.
Aw.
Yeah, you're one of my best friends. So, okay, minute probably about up. Mm-hmm. You said last time, you've only ever said good things about Hannah.
That's true. You have only ever said good things. In fact, he's got this cabinet that you open it up and there's this homage with candles in it.
Yep,
just
and
with your sister's picture up
pictures
there.
of her, and also the eyes are crossed out.
Well, yeah, there's that. That's creepy.
That's not true.
No, it's not.
But I guess the negative talk section of it, you bullied me a lot when I was little. When we were both younger, you bullied me a lot, like relentlessly. But I can't fault you for it too much, because we both kind of know why it was, because our oldest sister bullied you, and so you bullied me. And then I told Caitlin about it. And so she bullied you again.
And then the water came downhill.
Yeah, shit rolls downhill, and then it gets cycled back up. Somehow. There's an elevator at the bottom that takes it back up.
There's a shit elevator.
So it rolls back, and eventually you've got like a shit marble. Like it rolls down so many times.
Right.
And it polishes itself, and it becomes like a... what's the name for fossilized shit?
Name for fossil... I knew the...
It sounds like trilobite, but it's not trilobite.
It's not.
But anyway, it becomes a piece of that.
Sure.
So, yeah, I can't fault you too much for being so mean to me when I was little. It's to the point, though, where even though we've been great friends for the longest time, and you've been so very supportive of me, I will still flinch sometimes when you try to hug me.
Right, he's told me the stories like that, like more than once. More than once.
This is like the second time I've told you this story tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, you during graduation last May, when she was leaving, she went to give me a hug and moved a little too suddenly, and I flinched in terror. So, in conclusion, Hannah, I love you very much, but you scare the living shit out of me sometimes.
Coprolite.
Coprolite, thank you. Thank you. Our fact checker, OJ, just told us that the name is Coprolite.
Yeah, for fossilized shit.
We need a fact. We should go full Joe Rogan with this and have a fact checker off to the side.
That'd be cool.
hey, bring that. What's that? Bring out that picture of that really ripped chimp. God, look at that thing. He could tear you in half.
That's a sexy chimp.
That's every episode of the Joe Rogan podcast. Is holy that chimp could tear my arms off. Also, lots of smoking weed.
Well, yeah.
Speaking of weed, thing that happened, we voted recently
whether or not to have recreational marijuana in our state.
Didn't pass. It was for being the very first time that a ballot like that has come up in a conservative state like North Dakota, it did better than maybe some people were expecting. I know some other people at work were expecting it to do better than it did, but I thought it was. I did not think it was going to pass at all.
No.
But it did better than I thought it would, and I think it'll come back in 2 years.
It was 59-41, was that it?
Yep, 59-41. So yeah. I think it'll come back in a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think the bill definitely, not the bill. It's not in legislation.
I'm a bill.
I'm just a bill. I'm just Droopy Dog. It's probably, was it the same guy?
It might have been.
But anyway, it'll probably come back in a couple of years. It needs some pretty heavy revisions, I think. It was far too liberal, I suppose. Not in the sense that it was like, do whatever you want with weed.
Right. Yeah, it was 5 words long. The whole thing, you can smoke weed now. That was it. That was the whole bill.
That was the gist, essentially. Yeah. It's like, you can have as much as you want and no one can tell you you're wrong. It's like, I don't know. It needs a little bit, some rules.
Yeah, needs some rules. You can't do that with alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some rules for it. Well, nobody's going to arrest you for having like 100 bottles of alcohol. But in other states, you can only have a certain weight percentage where it's legal recreationally. You can only have a certain amount of weight.
Yeah, it's like less than an ounce or something like that.
Yeah, and a certain amount of plants, whereas the measure this year for North Dakota was like, as much as you want, as many plants as you like. It's like, no. How about no? Anyway, yeah, we both voted. I felt very good. This is actually the first time I got to vote.
Really? Like ever?
Yeah, because I told you about this yesterday.
Right.
So the very first time this is going to be a little depressing. The very first time that I went to vote, that I was 18, was my freshman year of college, and it was the midterm election in 2014. And I was going to go vote. I actually went to the parking lot of the polling place, and I didn't go in because I was having a panic attack, and I was extremely depressed because I got dumped the day earlier.
Oh, yeah.
So I decided not to go do it because I just did not feel like being in public. And then during the presidential election, most recently, I got turned away for some tax information that I was unaware of, having to do with me at the time being listed as a dependent on my parents' tax information because I was a student. I was not a Minot resident, and therefore...
Even though you were living here.
I was living here, but I was not legally a Minot resident, at least for taxable purposes. I had an apartment and everything that I was paying for, but I could still be, since I was a student, listed as a dependent on my parents' tax information. At least that's the way I understood it. And the lady that was doing it was like, you don't want to do this. It's going to screw your stuff up. And I was like, oh, okay, I really wanted to vote, but whatever.
I guess not.
It happened to another one of my friends, so ended up not doing that. But this year, I did. I exercised my right as an American. I felt very good afterwards. I felt very good. I was a little nervous beforehand because I felt like maybe I'm cursed. And like every time I try to go vote, I'll get turned away for some reason or another. But no, I did it, and I felt very good afterwards. So
the next time you go vote, you're going to find out you've been dead the whole time.
Sir, you are legally dead. What? When did that happen? Have you checked your heartbeat recently? I suppose not. Holy shit, I'm dead.
Wow.
Wow, I'm dead. Wow, look, it's Ernest Hemingway. Wow.
Okay.
All these other dead writers are here. Wow. Oh, wow. Another thing to talk about that we talked about last time that I'm going to talk about again. Not last time as in last time we recorded the podcast, but the first time we tried to record this episode of the podcast. You know what I'm talking about.
We're on
listeners.
board. We got you.
You get it.
Mm-hmm.
is I'm going hunting this weekend. It's
Oh, yeah.
the opening of rifle season for North Dakota for deer. I've got a license for a mule deer doe out in the Badlands, out by Theodore Roosevelt National Park,
It's going to be awesome.
near the town of Grassy Butte, and I'm very excited.
Oh, it's pronounced Butte.
Yes, not Grassy Butte.
Okay.
It is Grassy Butte.
Gotcha.
As in a small plateau.
And it's grassy.
Yes, there's grass on
Okay.
it. I've seen it, and there is grass there, yes. There are some buttes, not much grass. There are some prickly pear cacti out there. One of the very first years I went out to the Badlands to hunt, a family friend of ours that we would go hunting with, he and I and my oldest sister had gone up to the top of this butte, and we were looking at some deer that were down below it. And I think there was a buck that he wanted to shoot at down there, and he laid down, went prone, and realized he'd laid down on a patch of prickly pears.
Oh.
So he was not having a good time, and he just started, Caitlin, start shooting! And so she's like, okay, Blake, and my oldest sister, at least at that point, I don't know, because she doesn't go hunting with us anymore, she goes hunting with her husband. But at that point, she was kind of infamous for basically just unloading her entire magazines at whatever was down there.
Wow.
And usually not hitting much. So she starts unloading, but that's the whole story, basically. I don't think they hit anything. And Blake was not very pleased with himself.
Prickly pear.
Another time, Hannah got her face a little too close to the scope on her rifle.
Oh.
Ended up with a nice crescent scar in the middle of her forehead. That's mostly faded by now. But
And that was years ago.
This was years ago. This was when I was like 14, I think. And as we were going to the emergency room to get it stitched and or glued shut, I decided to fuck with her because we were still it was still at that point where we kind of hated each other a little bit.
Yeah.
It was more like, friendly ribbing each other instead of just full on like bullying and reciprocating.
Right.
So Hannah's somewhat easily upset. I don't know if I should share that necessarily. You're fine. You're listening, sister.
She's got a short fuse.
Not short fuse necessarily, but she gets very emotional, and so I knew that, and she was very concerned that she was going to have stitches. She didn't want to have stitches, and so as we were on the truck riding to the nearest emergency room, I was like, "Hey, Hannah, you're probably going to have stitches. That's bleeding a lot," and she starts freaking out.
Aww.
I feel bad about that now, but it is still kind of funny. It was very funny at the time.
And did she need stitches?
No, they glued it. They super glued it. Medical super glue.
Right.
Whatever. It's basically the same shit. They glued it shut, and we went back out that same day. But yeah, I'm really excited. We've always got good stories when we go hunting. Last year, I almost collapsed of exhaustion trying to drag a deer uphill because I'm horribly out of shape. My 60-year-old father was fine, and I was just huffing and wheezing, and halfway up my legs decided to stop working. Like, they skipped straight past anaerobic respiration where it starts burning and just went straight into non-function. So I don't know if walking to work every day will have done anything. But
you don't live that far, though.
Yeah, I live very close, so it's not like I've got to trek to work every day. It's not even a block.
He has a Sherpa guide.
I mean, it's starting to get pretty snowy out there.
Yeah.
We got a lot of snow yesterday. Yeah, I guess it's now time to talk about the album. As I said at the start of the episode, we are talking about When the End Began by Silent Planet. Silent Planet is one of my very favorite bands in the whole world. First was introduced to them, I think, in 2015, and it was a week before I went to Warped Tour, and I had just been introduced to Silent Planet. They had kind of blown up on the Metalcore subreddit, and I was like, wow, I really like this band. And they announced that same week that they were going to be doing a surprise performance in a whole bunch of different venues and locations that they felt like they were underplayed, or that they hadn't played in before. And so they kind of did a DIY cross-country tour to get back from the end of their normal tour that they were on before.
Right.
With, I think, like Fit for a King and a couple other bigger metalcore bands. And so they kind of piggybacked off a couple other smaller tours and smaller concerts that were going on. And they played at Rhythm Records in Bismarck. And the little the tiny, tiny, tiny little venue in the back of that record store, which is called Side B. They played in there, and there's... Their drum kit was on, because normally like the headliner in a show, the drum kit they usually have their own drum kit set up for the entire time while the other bands play.
It's covered with a sheet or something. Yeah.
So there's a tiny little stage there inside B, and the drum kit took up the entire thing. So all the other bands had their drum kits on the floor, which was actually pretty cool. Mm-hmm. There was a great like I guess like post-rock, post-punk type band that played first. That was called Comrades that I really enjoyed. And I've listened to a lot more of their stuff since I watched that show. And they had a really cool triggered light kit on their drums.
Neat.
That would turn on, and they used a lot of looping effects and stuff like that. It was very cool. And then Sequences played, which is like a hardcore band from Bismarck. And I've seen them 2 more times since then, and they always put on a fantastic show. And then Silent Planet played, and I wasn't entirely familiar with their work at that point. I knew a little bit, but I was really into it. And so a lot of other people that were there weren't there necessarily to see Silent Planet. They just went there to see a local show.
Sure.
And I was from out of town, so I came there to see Silent Planet. And so I was kind of, going nuts a little bit. And their first album is not particularly moshable necessarily.
Sure.
But like I was headbanging a lot to the point where Garrett, the lead singer, came up to me while they were in the middle of a song. There's some breakdown or something going on. And he handed me a water bottle. I was like, don't hurt yourself, buddy. And I had a fantastic conversation with him after the show was done, and bought some merch. He was extremely thankful. Garrett is a great dude, it seems like, working the merch table. And when I saw them at Warped Tour last year, Thomas, who's the bassist and the backing vocalist, was working the merch booth, and he was a little unfocused because he was trying to watch the concert behind me, and I was like, hey, can I get a shirt? Can I get a shirt? What's up? What are you doing? I'm trying to watch Sylar. It's like, okay. Can I buy a shirt? I love you guys. Oh yeah, sure. But Thomas seems like a great dude too. But all great dudes in the band. So yeah, that was at the time when that came out. That was their first album. Just The Night God Slept.
Right, and they are a band of Christians.
Yeah, they're definitely a Christian band, especially, I mean, I don't know necessarily the viewpoints of the other ones, because Garrett is very much a front man.
Yeah.
And but I think they're all pretty faithful people. And Garrett he's got dual degrees. I think they're bachelor degrees, but still, he's got dual degrees in both psychology and theology. So that really informs a lot of their music. He's extremely well-read. And if you've listened to any of their work, also very, I think verbose is almost the word you want to use, but that has kind of a negative context to it.
Yeah, but you get the idea.
Yeah, he's very literary, to the point where they have footnotes for all of their songs. If you want to take a look at this, they usually have the footnotes online as well. But yeah, below every song, there is footnotes and references for different books that Garrett is referencing, or different movies sometimes. Now they'll reference their own songs occasionally because a lot of them sort of weave together, have very similar themes, so they'll have sort of recurring themes through some of their songs. Wow. So yeah, they're an extremely literary band. But in 2016, they came out with their second album, which is Everything Was Sound. That one, I should talk a little bit about the theme, I suppose, of their first album.
Okay.
So the theme of the first album is, I guess, The Seven Sisters is the name I can use for it now that concept is a little bit more clear in my mind after listening to this one. So the Seven Sisters refer to the protagonists of the album, which are 7 different women who survived horrific historical events.
Okay.
One of which is in the song Tiny Hands, was the massacre of a French village during World War II by the SS, where she was a school teacher, and all the women and children were put in the church. All of the men were taken out to a field, and the Nazis shot all of the men. And then when all the women and children were in the church, they started the church on fire and started shooting anyone that came out. And so she tried to shield all the children in the church with her body, including her own daughter, and she was shot 5 times, but wasn't successful at saving them, and eventually managed to crawl out one of the windows in the church and landed in the field, or the garden. They had peas next to the church that they were growing in the garden, and so she hid in there until the Nazis left.
Wow.
And it's situations like that. There's another one about a woman who survived the bombing of Hiroshima. That one's called Dark Strand. I can't quite pronounce the Japanese name of the song. They do that a lot as well. They'll have certain songs that have names in other languages that they'll call that. If you want to hand the slipcover back to me.
Here you go.
Because I've got the vinyl slipcover because it's got all the references on it.
Right, and I can't see any of them. I can tell that they're words.
Yeah, they're very small.
But I didn't bring the readers.
You didn't bring your readers. So their second album, which came out in 2016, is Everything Was Sound. And that one, once again, has a very unified theme, being different kinds. I believe there's 9 rooms, as they call them, different kinds of mental illness. There's the song Nervosa, which is about anorexia and bulimia. I think the focus is far more on anorexia.
Right, because that's what it's called, anorexia
nervosa. Anorexia nervosa. There's Panic Room, which was about PTSD, and based on the experiences of a very close friend of the band who served in Iraq. And so, or I think it was Iraq. It might have been Afghanistan, but wars in the Middle East.
Right.
That he had served there. There was another song, Understanding Love Is Loss, which is about grief and depression. First Father is also about grief, and sort of recurring themes, and each of them is associated with a color on the color wheel. And it's really cool because all of the videos that they posted for that album that were not that did not have a full music video, it just had like a lyric video, had a backdrop of like a tank of water with a white backdrop, filmed upside down, and they would drop that color from the color wheel into the tank, and the video was mirrored so it was symmetrical. The amount of dye that was dropped into the tank was sort of timed with the intensity of the music. So it was created very, very beautiful visuals to look at for just a lyric video. That album was really what cemented Silent Planet as one of my favorite bands. Like before that, I was like, I really like these guys. They've got, a very unique style, especially considering a lot of their contemporaries in metalcore. They seem very different. And when that album came out, it's like, holy shit, these guys are something special. These guys they really are something special. And so I was understandably very, very pumped when they announced this album. I've been keeping track of the singles as they come out, and now I'm very happy to be talking about this album, When the End Began, by Silent Planet. Sort of playing in with the title, I don't really know where to start. I don't know where to begin with this album.
When the end began.
So I think maybe it might be best to do it track by track. So the first track on the album is called Thus Spoke. It's the intro to the entire album. That one has a lot of references to previous songs, including conclusion of the previous album, which is called Inhabit the Wound, as well as some biblical references from Genesis 7, and as well as a reference from the Bhagavad Gita. And then where the title comes from is from a Friedrich Nietzsche book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
Zarathustra, yes.
I can't even pronounce
It's hard
that.
to say.
I like it. There's not really a theme to it. It's just mostly an introduction to the album. The album in general seems to be about modern ills, essentially. Modern societal problems, things that are keeping us from really being ourselves and from living the lives we should be living, whatever you think that might be.
Right.
Different ills of modern man and Western society, especially. So Thus Spoke goes straight into The New Eternity, which is a song that I am struggling a little bit to figure out precisely what it's about. It seems to mostly be about just modern technological progress and what that's doing to our society. The reference here says Revelation 8:11, but to me it seems more applicable to the situation and say, what's the town that has had terrible water for the last couple of years?
Yeah, in Michigan. Yeah.
But the first line is
Flint.
Flint, yeah. So I think the quote is more applicable to the situation in Flint a little bit anyway. It's Mother, tell me, why do the waters make us sick? And that could just be anywhere in the world that has terrible water, but in the American context, it reminds me of that.
But anywhere else, it would be a cholera thing.
Yeah, it would be some sort of disease, but it happens right here in the U.S. It's not just a third world problem.
Where are these guys from?
They are from California. I'm struggling to think of the exact name. I think it's a suburb of L.A.
Okay. There are 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, there's a couple LA suburbs.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're from Southern California. And it's if you hear Garrett just speak, it's very clear. He has a very Southern California accent. whoa, dude.
All right.
He's a very chill dude. Let's see. So yeah, New Eternity, as I said, it seems to be very much so about human progress. The chorus that opens up is, strange fruit grows on the vine of humankind. Beneath a bright synthetic sky, I saw the future die. There's the refrain of that. A web of wires in our mind weaves an empire down our spine. I fear we've sealed our fate. There's no escape. There's no escape. The New Eternity. That's got some power to it, I think.
Powerful. Yeah, there's very dynamic music. It's not just, like heavy all the time.
There is a lot of balance. I think they've struck a very good back and forth between Garrett and Thomas, because the Night God Slept was mostly just Garrett. I'm struggling to think of much melodic vocals at all from Thomas. And as the albums have gone on, Thomas has started to feature more and more heavily in their songs, and I appreciate that very much. He contributes a lot to my favorite song, which we'll get to later.
Favorite song on this album?
My favorite song on this album.
Yeah.
So that's The New Eternity. Next comes Northern Fires, which is far less ambiguous in its subject matter. Northern Fires, the subtitle is Guernica, which, if you know anything about pre-World War II history, refers to the bombing of Guernica in the Spanish Civil War, which was fought between fascists and communists and, I guess, nationalists and a whole bunch of different factions fighting over Spain. The nationalists or fascists being supported by Nazi Germany.
Right, well, yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Because that was their thing. It's not a simple song necessarily. There's a lot to say to it, but the subject matter is very clear, and I think its message is very effective. Because we live in an age where suddenly some people think fascism is okay.
Suddenly that's cool. It's not, necessarily politically correct to hate Nazis anymore.
And
what's the deal?
It's so bizarre. So I think this is more so just the historical context. It has a place in our modern context as well, because nationalism is coming back, and it's so weird to be living in that age.
Yeah.
Having grown up my entire life surrounded by Nazis are the bad guys, and then hearing people say, well, they're not all bad people. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? So next comes After Dusk, which is a song, again, that I'm not entirely sure what the theme of After Dusk is. It seems to be resource extraction, possibly. I think what I wrote down in my notes here is like the cycle of history, things repeating themselves, invasion and revolution and all these things happening over and over again. I think pollution is a theme of it. One of the chorus is it fatal? Is the fallout inevitable? It was all for nothing, spiraling out of control. Yeah, the choruses on this album, just for a second, the choruses I think are all fantastic. This album has a bit more conventional structure to it than some of their previous works. Like on Everything Was Sound, there was a song called Redivider, which was a lyrical palindrome.
Neat.
Yeah, and that one was way out there, and even the band was like, this song is just kind of like we were just experimenting and see if we could do this. And I think that one, the subject was bipolar disorder, which sort of makes sense because it's a palindrome. It goes back and forth. Right. But at any rate, the choruses are so powerful on almost every song. I think the only song that does not have a melodic chorus is Vanity of Sleep, if I recall. Yeah, I think Vanity of Sleep is the only one that does not have some sort of a melodic chorus to it. And not all of them are conventional melodic choruses. There's one we'll get to that has a very strange auto-tune segment to it that was entirely unexpected but very effective. So the next song is Visible Unseen, which is, I think, one of the most... I don't know exactly how to describe how I feel about it personally, but it's something that I've always found very affecting and touching. Visible Unseen is about homeless gay youths and how the rates of homelessness and also suicide are so much higher amongst young homosexuals or LGBTQ people in that community. Have a much higher rate of suicide and of homelessness due to being kicked out or rejected by their families. And so the song is very much about that, about the pain of having to stop lying to yourself and the pain about having to stop lying to your family and accepting yourself for who you are, even though it might cost you your home and your place in your family and potentially the love of your family. which is something that I've always found to be a very affecting subject matter because it's hard for me to imagine. It's difficult for me to imagine. I empathize with it a lot, but it's, I'm not LGBTQ, so I don't necessarily know what it's like to go through that. But thinking of just getting kicked out by...
Right, because you have a family. You know...
Yeah.
You know how you feel about them, and if they suddenly, like this weekend, they took you out hunting and they left you in the Badlands.
Yeah, over something I did and something I had, or not something I did, over something that I had no control over because it was
who you are.
Yeah, because it was an element of my life from the very beginning. If they decided to cut ties with me because of that, that's a fear that everyone can relate to. Mm-hmm. It's always been very affecting to me, and I think it's a fantastic song. One of the things that they reference here, negatively, I might add, is the gospel promulgated through the teachings of Joel Osteen and others. They, alongside, I believe, August Burns Red, which is another Christian metalcore band, have a somewhat negative view of super churches. August Burns Red, on one of their more recent albums, not their newest one, but the one before it, had a song called Blackwood that was entirely like a not a diss track, but like it was a tear down of like super churches and pastors that make millions and millions of dollars off of people.
Prosperity doctrine.
Yeah, off of faith. The prosperity doctrine, and that's what they reference there is the prosperity gospel from Joel Osteen. So propagating their beliefs to make money and that sort of thing. And the effect that has on people, getting kicked out and propagating hatred towards LGBT community people or non-acceptance at the very least.
Yeah.
Next up comes Vanity of Sleep, which is a song about consumer despair, essentially. Vanity of Sleep is talking about the lament of the digital age, that we are so connected to each other, but so many people feel more alone than ever. One of the lines that I find most affecting is give me something to hold, give me something that bleeds. I'll scour the earth for my identity. Is there a cure for a sick society? And then there is, so I'll dig through these masks till I find my face, separate from the false pretense I embraced. It kills me to know that you'll never find peace. You can have all the world, but you'll never be free. And that's when the song sort of fades out a little bit and you get ready for a breakdown, which is wonderful because like the pre-breakdown line has become sort of a meme in metalcore, but when you do it well, man, it works. So the next song that comes up is a very personal one for me. It's In Absence. We talked about it when the single came out. In Absence is about losing a loved one to Alzheimer's, and I lost my grandfather to Alzheimer's when I was a teenager. So
it affected you personally.
Yeah. This song makes me cry pretty much every time. If I like am actually listening to it and I'm thinking about it, I will start to tear up. So at the risk of starting to do that on the podcast, I don't want to start crying right now. But yeah, it's an extremely affecting song, and this is the one that Thomas definitely contributes most to, and it's beautiful. It is my favorite song off of this album. As much as I was excited for Depths 3, which is fantastic, and we'll talk about it in a little bit.
In a moment.
But as much as I was excited for that, In Absence was a complete surprise when it came out because like you hear it open and it's this ambient and melodic track, and it's like, wow, I was not expecting this from one of the singles that they would release. And I was not expecting it from them at all. And here it was, and immediately it was like, oh, shit, I'm going to start crying. So I appreciate it very much for that, and it's my favorite song on the album.
So how long ago did your grandfather pass?
Oh, I think I was 17, just about to turn 18. I think it was the month of my birthday. I believe it was March. I feel like I should know that, but and I'm a little ashamed that I don't know the exact date, but I mean, it wasn't exactly a pleasant thing that you want to remember all the time, but it's a notable event in my life that I feel like I should have down a little bit more significantly. But yeah, that was a tough week because we spent a lot of time in Bismarck in the hospital, and there was a couple of years there where it was, or like a year straight, I suppose, where I spent a lot of time in hospitals looking after loved ones. Because first it was my grandfather who was in the hospital. I believe it started out, he was just dehydrated at his nursing home. He hadn't been eating or drinking or something like that, or had been forgetting to do something, because that's what Alzheimer's does. Oh, my dad's calling me right now. Hold on. Oh, well, it went to voicemail. The last time he called me, we were recording a podcast.
He
Come
knows.
on, Dad.
He knows.
He knows.
Yeah, and then your dad, speaking of...
Yeah, so first it was my grandmother that ended up in the hospital a couple months after my grandfather died, and then she ended up passing away there. She had some stomach issues, I think. She had some ulcers and whatnot, and when you get to be 80 plus, that sort of thing, plus the grief of not having her husband, who she was married to for a very long time, that ends up you don't usually recover from that sort of thing.
Right.
And if there's one blessing to both those, it's that it wasn't entirely unexpected. I was kind of prepared for it, especially with my grandpa. It's the tragedy of Alzheimer's is that they don't just stop. They're not them up until the end.
Right, you have to watch them fade.
You have to watch them fade away, and that's what the song is about. You have to watch a lot of the things that you love about that person fade away until, especially for me, being the youngest in my family, I'm the person you would probably remember the least. And so that was always a really tough thing about going to visit him in the nursing home, was knowing he probably would not know who I was.
Simply because he didn't have enough memories of you.
Yeah. And like I spent weeks at their house every summer in the grand scope of his life, which was an amazing life, by the way. In the grand scope of his life, I was there for not all that long.
Right.
I was there for 17 years up until that point, and he was in his 80s. So anyway, yeah, and my grandmother died after that, and she was in the hospital for a couple of weeks before that, and I was like, yeah, I think this is probably going to happen.
Right.
So it wasn't quite as tough. It's still obviously very sad, but you learn to expect it a little bit, and it softens the blow. And then my dad, who just tried to call, he is fine right now, by the way. I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but he's absolutely fine.
He's well enough to use a phone.
Yeah.
We know that.
He's well enough to use a phone and to drag a deer up a hill far better than I can. A couple days before Christmas, he had a colonoscopy scheduled and went and did it, and they found something.
Wow.
And we're like, hey, you got the colon cancer. And he was like, oh, that sucks. And so they removed, I think, a foot from his colon or his lower intestine.
Whose foot was it?
Red Foreman's. It was Red Foreman's foot, shoved all the way up his ass.
Was there a shoe?
There was. My dad grew up in the 70s, so it works. Yeah, so so it was right before Christmas. I think it might have been on Hannah's birthday or the day after Hannah's birthday when he had that scheduled and found out. So it made for a bit of a gray Christmas, just a little bit. There was sort of a pallor that hung over the house.
Wow.
But
at least you can say, now we know what's up Dad's ass.
It was a polyp, apparently. So yeah, the pallor sort of hung over the house a little bit, and I was pretty okay because the prognosis was very good. So I was like, he's going to be fine. He's my dad. Of course he's going to be fine. And he was. He had chemo for a couple months, or 2 months after the surgery. They started chemo, and it went until a couple of days before I left for college, because I was a senior in high school at the time. So chemo lasted until a couple of days before I went to college, and he was always extremely tired.
Yeah, that'll drain you. Yeah.
Or maybe maybe I'm getting my years wrong here, because if it was that summer, then I would have been working at the plant as well. Well, we drove home separately, so maybe I don't.
Something
happened. He was always very tired, and he would fall asleep in my room trying to talk to me.
Oh, really?
I'd be listening to some music, and he'd be like, "Hey, how was school?" Or this was during the winter that this happened, where he was like, "Hey, how was school?" And I was like, "Oh, it was fine." And then he would sort of trail off and fall asleep on my bed, and then I would just sort of leave him there till dinner, and then I would come back. "Hey, Dad, it's dinner time." "Oh, okay." And get up and go have dinner with us. But that summer I was working at the plant, but that sort of thing happened while I was still in high school, my senior year of high school.
Sure.
And then I worked at that power plant that summer, and then when I was done with work, I had 2 weeks off before college started, and so I went with him for his last treatment, because I hadn't gone with any other time.
And he was already clean at that point. He was already
pretty much
for the last treatment.
And they were pretty certain they had gotten everything with the surgery, but they're like, if you don't do chemo, it's 60% that you won't recur or relapse or whatever they call it. Mm-hmm. And if you do chemo, it's 95. And my dad was like, when do we start?
Let's never have to do this shit again.
Yeah. Literally, because that's where the poop comes out.
Yeah, right.
Colon cancer is not funny, but it is kind of funny because that's where poop comes out.
There's lots of poop jokes.
Dave Barry wrote a comedy sketch about it that I read for speech that year. Actually, I considered doing it. I was like, this doesn't quite work. So where were we? Share the Body comes up next. Mm-hmm. Share the Body is about the opioid epidemic that's going on in the Western world right now. There is, let's see, one line is, "Come shoot me up into the night." Shooting up. He's wielding a needle. It's laced with ambition, set on finding forever, blacking out the friction. She's clutching a bottle, conscripted prescription, deaf to my dissent, void of all volition. Like, there's a lot of good shit on this. The lechery, the treachery, oh come love, sit next to me. This anatomy is built like tragedy. Don't you know me by these scars, these marks where I are? I mean I am, I mean I was supposed to be someone. Wow. I do like the intentional grammatic error there, like these marks where I are, I mean I am, I mean I was. Like, it's a addict correcting themselves. It's incarnation of society, the face of evil is the face of need, is the last line in that song. The first reference is from Get Out, apparently.
From the movie Get Out?
Yeah, the first reference, it's number 1, Jordan Peele, Get Out, which is watching from the bottom of a stranger's mind, which if you know what Get Out is about, that makes sense. The next one comes up is Firstborn. The subtitle is Ya Aberni, which is Arabic for You Bury Me, which is a line in the song. And the idea of that phrase in Arabic is that you love someone so much that you can't bear the thought of having to live without them, and so you wish to die first, so you don't have to live in a world where they aren't there.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, so that's what the song is about. There are names in the references. Specifically, there is it's in loving memory of Matthew Leon and in loving memory of Xander Solomon Hendricks. I don't know who those people are. I don't know if they were friends of the band or family members of people they know or something like that. But I think this is a very personal song for them. Then comes Lower Empire, which Lower Empire, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's mostly about revolution and civil rights. One of the references here is, they reference an episode of South Park on this. Let me see what that is. I hadn't noticed that before. Matt Stone and Trey Parker, South Park, season 16, episode 10. That is reference number 6. Where is that? Appetite for endless apathy, breathing in insecurity. What?
Whoa. What was said on South Park that
was
inspired
like that? Holy shit. One of the other ones, there's reference Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. It also seems to be about prisoners. According to Prison Policy Initiative, America currently has the largest prison population in the world at 2.3 million people. They reference one of their own songs from 2012. I thought the Soweto Uprising. Is referenced there. So it seems to be very much so about revolution and civil rights and fighting for your rights, that sort of thing. The next one that comes up is Anatomy of Time, also known as Babel. This is the song, I believe, that has maybe it was Lower Empire that has...
the auto-tune?
Yeah, the auto-tune part. I think that's Lower Empire that has the very strange auto-tune part, and also the fastest picking on the album. That album, Lower Empire shreds. Like, that song shreds, dude.
Totally.
It absolutely does. Then there's Anatomy of Time, a.k.a. Babel. That one seems to be about free will, maybe the duality of man. I haven't quite figured it out. The end of the song is, I fear we have been sentenced to be free. So I think it's somebody contemplating free will and choice and all the things that has led, or that has... That having, all the things that having free will has led to in human history. And then the album concludes with Depths. That was some weird mouth noises. The album concludes with Depths 3, the sequel to Depths 2, which was the sequel to Depths.
Depths 1.
So Depths was a song that appeared on their very first release, their first EP called Come Wind, Come Weather. It was the first song on there. And there is a recurring theme throughout each of these songs, and a recurring line specifically, which is Lord, did you see me as I was dreaming? I'm not entirely familiar with all the lyrics and the subject of Depths 1, but Depths 2 is specifically about a dream or a nightmare that Garrett had. It was a fever dream that he had in the middle of a thunderstorm that was going on around his house. And the dream was so intense that when he woke up from it, he basically ran outside and was just like in such a state that he ran outside into the rain. And then part of the song is like hallucinations of the Seven Sisters, the protagonists of that album.
Sure.
And then basically seeing a vision of God, essentially. And Depths 3 sort of continues that. It's narratively seems to be about being lost at sea, a very metaphysical ocean, I think.
It's not the actual ocean.
Yeah, it's not the actual ocean. It's sort of lamenting all of the subjects on the album and all of the things that are wrong with our society and with the world. And instead of in Depths 2, it was when I slept in that garden, Lord, did you see me as I was dreaming. This time it's and when I awoke in that garden, Lord, did you see me as I was dreaming. I locked eyes with the storm. The sky sank down to receive the fury of the sea, the abolition of my being, the precipice of eternity, which is a recurring line from one of their previous songs. Incandescence burst through the black. The veil was torn as the void collapsed. The rains will subside. Be my eyes. Show me hope in the maw of the night. Our fractured pasts fall into one. A dozen stars collide as a perpetual sun. And as we disintegrate, will you be the fire that burns in my lungs? Breathe me in. Watch me burn. Come breathe me in. You'll watch me burn, which is echoing Depths 2, and is also probably the heaviest vocal on the album. That's to speak about, now that we're done with track by track, to speak about Garrett's vocal performance on this. He has a lot of range.
Right, and
it seems.
I didn't hear the this is the first I'm hearing this band. I need to go back and listen to, the other stuff so I can compare.
Yeah,
and see where they've progressed. Yeah.
Their first one, he mostly did sort of mid-ranged vocals on their first album, and he started doing more lows on their second. And then on this one, he has a lot of low growls mixed with, he has sort of a very raspy spoken word, like shout, that he does in a lot of the more intense passages and more intense verses. He has more of a spoken word shout that occasionally erupts into a more traditional scream, and then balanced with very, very deep lows that he's started to develop. And I think Garrett has, like, he was always a good vocalist, but this has turned him into a great vocalist.
Nice.
He's progressed a lot.
So where in the pantheon of their music would you put this album? Would you say?
Oh, that's so tough.
Yeah.
What I said on Facebook last night when I was thinking about this is, I don't know if I can rank any of them, but at the very least, it's a worthy successor to Everything Was Sound.
Cool.
It's a worthy successor. I don't know if it's better, but it's just as good, and by being just as good, that means it's fantastic.
Yeah.
That means it's great. I don't really know like what else to say about it. Like, what are your thoughts in general? Because I've been talking a lot. Yeah. I noticed during my episodes I tend to dominate the discussion quite a bit. So
which is fine.
It's understandable, but I've got my vinyl record in front of the microphone there for a second.
You're talking into vinyl.
Yeah, but so if you could share some of your thoughts and some of your impressions that you had.
Well, see, I wish I had more time to listen to it. I only got through one listen doing the dishes.
Okay.
Which is my time to really dig into music.
Yeah.
I really like this album. I like this band a lot. I thought it was very deep.
It is. It's definitely deep. But yeah, as a fan of the band, I will say that I think it is. It certainly has had a very profound impact on me many times. I remember the first time I listened to Everything Was Sound, I was transfixed the entire time I was listening to it. I just put the headphones on and I hardly moved for about 45 minutes or whatever the duration was. I hardly moved from the chair I was sitting in because I was that transfixed by what was going on between my eardrums.
Nice.
Yeah, there was a lot to dig into.
Were you listening to it off the vinyl? It was the vinyl copy. So you did have to make some motion to flip the thing.
Yeah. So I had to move. I sat on the floor, which was uncomfortable for me because I have a weird, I don't know, like injury or something on my side. I think it came from just sitting the wrong way while I was playing. I've been playing a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 lately, and I don't know if I was just sitting the wrong way, but I feel like, can you dislocate a rib?
Maybe.
Because I feel like maybe I've done that because whenever I stretch a certain way, it's like, oh, God, no. Ow, 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 ow.
Is it rib or is it rib meat? That might be.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what the problem is.
Is it recurrent or is it just because you may have a catch? You ever had a catch before?
I a lot
of times they happen inside your ribs or near your rib cage, where even sometimes breathing can be difficult. Like if you take a deep breath, it'll kind of hurt.
Breathing, not so much. It's mostly just when I lean a certain way and or lean a little bit too harshly. I don't know. It's bizarre, but so that made sitting on the floor a little uncomfortable. But yeah, I listened to the vinyl my first way all the way through, and I've been listening to it digitally for convenience. But yeah, the first time I listened to it on the vinyl. One thing I want to mention on Depths 3 is the production. Will Putney, our old buddy Will Putney. He was the producer on this, and he also arranged the string section that you hear in Depths 3. And I think this is, I mentioned on our Pig Destroyer episode that Will Putney, and on our Fit for an Autopsy episode.
Right. His name comes up a lot.
Yeah, that Will Putney is used to be kind of hit or miss, but like I said, in the last couple of years, he's been pretty much all hits, and this is one of them. I think this was a slam dunk for Will, and a fantastic job all around.
Nice.
He's really, really come into his own as a producer, I think, and this is definitely one of his best. Not just because I like the album, because I think the production is legitimately very good.
Top notch.
The atmosphere on this album, more than anything, the atmosphere on this album is just amazing. They're always great at atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Silent Planet. This one really knocks it out of the park. I think you feel almost depressed just because every song is so dramatic.
Well, yeah.
That it's almost sold on the atmosphere alone, and then on top of it, you've got these amazing lyrics. We actually managed to talk about the album
for a long time.
I'm not entirely sure how compelling the discussion was, but the album is extremely compelling, and I think you all should listen to it.
You know, I think one of these times we need to pick an album we don't like. We've decided that...
I know, something we can just be... Maybe I mentioned a while ago while Jaron was still that maybe at some point I should bring an Attila album that I despise, which is most of them. I don't like Attila.
Not a fan of Attila?
No, but...
the Hun or the band? Yeah.
Either. One killed a lot of people and the other was the leader of the Huns.
Yeah, the other one was Mongolian.
No, Huns were more like in an Iran area, like near Middle East, that sort of thing. They were like a Turkic group, more near to Europe, not quite as far as Mongolia.
I'm thinking of
Genghis.
Genghis Khan.
Yeah, you're thinking of Genghis, who also invaded, but much later. Attila the Hun was late Roman period, whereas Genghis Khan was right after the Crusades.
Like the second Rome or... Because the second Rome was actually
late Western Rome.
Yeah, that was in Turkey. Yeah,
late Western Rome, and then Genghis Khan. This is the part of the podcast where we talk about world history. It's the second time we've done that. Okay, so I think we're definitely at time. Thank you all very much for listening. As I said before, many times, the album this year, the album of the year. No, the album this time was When the End Began. I almost said Everything Was Sound. You should check that one out too. Check out Silent Planet.
Check out all their stuff. It's all fantastic.
If you like metal and metalcore at all, I think you will enjoy them because they are a great band that has very important things to say, and they're great dudes. I've met two of them, and they're fantastic people.
So is this definitive metalcore then? I mean, I'm of the
Not
age,
so much.
I'm of the age where I don't know.
Definitive metalcore is what we were going to talk about last week.
Oh, okay.
With Killswitch Engage. I think
I listened to that one too. It was good.
Killswitch is more definitive metalcore. We might get to that one next time. Next time it comes around to me. Mm-hmm. I might keep that in mind. What is your album for next week?
My album for next week, because I decided that you said you haven't listened to a lot of the Big Four stuff.
Okay.
So I was thinking the first CD my grandmother ever bought me.
Wow, your grandmother, but okay.
My grandma, what is this? Anthrax.
Okay, so an Anthrax album.
Yeah, Spreading the Disease, the one that came before the one that sort of broke it for him. But
okay, so the Anthrax was I'm thinking I got them confused with Megadeth for a second.
Another one of the Big Four.
Another one of the Big Four, but I was thinking of Dave Mustaine. Not Dave Mustaine. Yeah, Dave Mustaine.
He's in Megadeth.
Yeah, Dave Mustaine.
Well, I saw them in Denver.
You saw Megadeth in Denver.
Yes. Suicidal Tendencies was the opening act. And to be honest, I actually went to go see Suicidal Tendencies.
I had a bubble.
You had a bubble?
In my throat.
Oh, no. There you go.
I wanted to come out while I tried to burp while I was drinking something, and that was unpleasant for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can tell that.
Next week, what Anthrax album is it?
Spreading the Disease.
Spreading the Disease by Anthrax, which is a very appropriate name for a band named Anthrax.
Yeah.
Okay. Spreading the Disease by Anthrax next week. Until then, you should hit up our social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're not on MySpace. We are on Instagram. Check those out. Links will be there. Not on Instagram because they don't let you do
They don't
links.
let you link.
I think they might sometimes.
You can do hashtags, but not links.
Yeah, you can do hashtags. So Facebook and Twitter both will have links. Please like us on Facebook, share us on Facebook, retweet us on Twitter, because the tweet that shows the podcast link, retweet that.
If you would, that would be nice.
Yeah, it's a super easy way to share it. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to say anything. You just retweet it, and people on your feed will see it.
And once again, folks, if you have $5,
yeah, it doesn't have to be $5.
Okay,
but
if you have $1,
approach us, send us a message on Facebook, leave a comment or something on Facebook, and let us know. Hey, I want to give you money for you to talk about me.
Here's a nickel. Say nice things for a minute.
Say nice things for a minute. Even if we don't know anything about you, we'll just talk shit based on your name.
We'll make things up.
We'll make things up. That's what we do. That's our lives. We make things up. All right, so it's about time for us to put this pony back in the pen.
What?
It's a little quote I just came up with. It's a little idiom?
Would you call it an idiom?
I don't know. It's a little saying I made up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put this pony back in the pen. He was in the pen. Now we got to put him back. Or he wasn't in the pen.
He wasn't in the pen.
He was out in the pasture.
He was out in the pasture having some nice undergrowth.
We're going to put him back in the pen.
We'll put him back in the pen. Because he's a
pony. Or maybe the stable. Maybe he's in the stable. We're going to put this pony back in the stable.
We're parking the pony.
We're going to put this steed back in the stable.
Oh, he's a steed now.
He's a steed.
Can you have a steed that's a pony?
You could, but it might not be a pony. It's just a steed. It could be it could be a bull. It could be a buffalo. If you can ride it, it's a steed.
I suppose. Can you ride a pony? Do you ride ponies?
I have ridden a horse. I wouldn't say that I can ride a horse. I was terrified. Generally, horses frighten me.
That's a big animal.
It's a very large animal, and I don't know how to behave around them. When I was very young, I almost got kicked in the head by a horse. Mm-hmm. It was probably further off than I remember it being, but I've been somewhat frightened of them ever since. I think they're beautiful, gorgeous animals.
Yeah.
But they scare me a little bit because they're very large. So anyway, horses aside, this steed, is back in the stable because it's time for us to stop talking.
But it's an alliteration if you say pen. So put this pony back in the pen.
But steed back in the stable is also an alliteration. Put this pony, God damn it. You're right.
Steed goes in the stable, pony goes in the pen with the puppies.
Let's put the steed back in the stable. Let's put the pony in the puppy pen. This is what we like to call the North Dakota ending. Yeah. Because there's the North Dakota or the Midwestern goodbye, which is saying, oh, I should probably be going, and then 20 minutes later, you're still talking.
Exactly. And it's really weird when it's at the mall, and then you say, oh, I gotta go, and then it turns out you're both parked in the same lot.
So you follow each other, and you keep on...
Silently.
Either that or you're like, hey, you parked over here. Hey, yeah. And then you start talking, you're standing next to your car with like one foot in your car, just kind of touching the brake. And both of you are probably thinking, God, I wish I could fucking leave, but I got to talk to this guy. Hopefully but neither of you are willing to acknowledge that you don't want to be talking anymore.
Right. Because that would be rude.
And this is the Midwest.
Exactly.
So...
You just pray for death at that moment.
You pray for a meteor to come and strike your car. Please kill me now.
Please.
I don't want to have to do this anymore.
Yeah, we should go out sometime for coffee or whatever. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah.
You get to heaven and God is like, hey, I saw you were having a tough time down there, so
You're welcome.
You're welcome. I got you out of there. Okay. Time for us to stop talking. No more witty quotes. Thank you very much for listening to the Bronze Metalist podcast. You made it to the end of another episode. As always, I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations.